It's confession time here at the race. Not from me, Glenn Freeman, but Scott Mitchell has something to tell us. And Ed Straw's here as well, perhaps to stick the boot in afterwards. So, Scott, the floor is yours. What do you have to tell us?
I have to admit that I was wrong about Fernando Alonso. I would like to stress I never underestimated how good he was as a racing driver, but I guess the operative word there is was. So when his comeback to Formula One was announced, obviously then with the then known as Renault team last summer, I was very much on the fence about it. I kind of thought that if Alonso did come back and was great and continued to be the sort of off-track character that we know he can be, and the team got his act together, then it would be a win for Formula One. But I had serious doubts whether that would all come together in that way, because, like I said, I knew how good Alonso was. I was a fan of F1 when he won two world titles, and I've got such respect for a lot of people who saw Alonso up close and have told me how mega he was and is. So it's not that I ever doubted that as such. It's that when I started following F1 properly closely, and by that I mean, working professionally in motorsport and then eventually working in Formula One itself, I don't think I saw the best of Alonso. I saw sometimes felt like a distracted version of him on track, and I didn't like what I saw off track. He was someone who, for example, in the McLaren Honda years, would twist the knife unnecessarily on Honda. He was a guy who seemed more focused on telling people how good a job he's doing, probably because he didn't have the machinery to sort of speak his case so clearly. And obviously he also became a little bit of a meme with some of the sort of amusing off-track antics, whether it was, sitting lying on the deck chair and things like this. So I felt he'd become not a caricature, that would be massively unfair, but I did feel like he was undermining his own quality and legacy a little bit. And obviously I can't speak for everybody who started following Formula One at a certain time, but Alonso's career does quite neatly divide into two, not even parts, but there's like the stunning first half of the career first part of the career where, he is rising to those world titles and he's the undisputed best driver in Formula One. And then there's the much larger second part of the career where he's the nearly man. He's fighting for teams who supposedly can't provide cars that are up to his standard or his quality. And if you only really closely watch the second part, I think it's very easy to underestimate what Alonso offers. And now I'm here to hold my hands up and say I fell into that category. I underestimated what it was he had to offer.
It's a really interesting point, actually. It's been so long since Alonso was on top of the world in Formula One. There'll be so many fans, including fans watching this video, who've only ever seen him perhaps as a nearly man, as someone who tried to drag Ferraris into contention with Sebastian Vettel. So if you're watching this, let us know how you view Alonso. Did you see him at his peak? Did you appreciate him when he's not been winning world championships? Or have you viewed him perhaps as almost a former legend or a current legend who's now hanging around for too long? Let us know what you think. But Ed, you and I were fortunate enough to witness Alonso's rise to superstardom and to world championship glory. Do you think that means you view him through a different lens to the one that Scott does?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because my first reflex to what Scott says is just to think, oh, you fool, you just didn't know what you were seeing. But then you think about it, it's been 8 years since he's won a Grand Prix, even longer since he's been a World Championship contender. You've got to go all the way back to that amazing season in 2012. So he is someone who's delivered a lot of his quality for minor positions in recent years, and that is hard to see from the outside. I'm fortunate in that I was following it closely on the ground, and I spend a lot of time looking down the order, so I'm kind of in a privileged position to see it in that regard. I also had the advantage of seeing Alonso at Indianapolis the first year he went. I was there for those 2 weeks, and I saw him at his first Daytona test ahead of the 24 hours, so you could see that the old Alonso was still there. But I think it's a fair point, because you have the Alonso sideshow, as I like to call it, which Scott referenced, which does perhaps undermine his credibility, shall we say, that he's always saying, oh, this is a wonder lap or whatever, always sticking the knife in where he feels it should be, because he's got a very, very clear idea of how things should be done. But unlike most people who are deservedly criticised for that. He was almost always delivering on track. Sometimes he had the odd moment where he got a bit belligerent and you could see it in the way he was racing on track. But for the most part, all the way through his 30s, as he advanced towards 40 as he is now, everything I saw of him showed that quality and determination was still there. But I can't blame people for not seeing it. What a shame Formula One has missed out on this, because a driver of Alonso's ability for the past decade, that quality should have been absolutely unmissable. He should have been up there at the front battling with Hamilton, Schumacher, Raikkonen year after year after year, and ultimately he hasn't. It's a real disappointment that F1's missed out on that.
If only there was some kind of entertainment platform, maybe a podcast that delved into retro stories, in-depth stories of eras like Alonso's, and actually was able to show and tell people like me just how great some of his stories were.
And if a Bring Back V10's logo hasn't just appeared on the screen, we'll be advertising for a new video editor later this week. But Scott, more seriously, what is it about Alonso's comeback in 2021 that's won you over? How did he change your mind?
One of the things that I really do like doing in this job is going quite detailed into drivers' race weekends, practice session performances, qualifying performances, and a great way to do that. And this is absolutely not an advert, although I guess get in touch if you want to pay us a load of money. F1 TV is a really good resource for that, because you can follow every driver on board. And one of the things that I started to do as this season went on is I started to follow Alonso on board a lot more closely. And then for a feature that I wrote on the race website, I watched back every single one of Alonso's starts and restarts from this season. And I also watched a bunch of his wheel-to-wheel battles really closely. And I'd already seen from the outside, just being in the position that I'm in and the job that we're doing, I'd already seen his quality, to be honest, this year. But it was this incredible up-close experience of Alonso in combat, witnessing his racecraft, that I was blown away. His judgment is sublime. There's this crazy mix, this amazing mix that he's able to have of just instinct whereby in the moment he's got so much experience and quality that he just knows what to do without thinking about it. But in those split-second moments where he does have to think about something, then you can see him make conscious decisions, whether that's, piling into a massive open space on the outside into the first major braking zone because everybody's bottled themselves up on the inside. He never falls into the trap of meandering into the middle lane going into turn one. He's always making clear decisions on the inside or outside. And when he's racing wheel to wheel with someone, and people watching this video might be able to think back to the fight with Kimi Raikkonen in Austria, he's actually such a fair driver. The defence of Lewis Hamilton in Hungary is another very good example of this. He knows exactly where to put his car. He knows exactly where the line is, but he doesn't cross it. He'll go closer than a millimetre up to the edge of the line, but he will not cross it. So I still think there have been plenty of times this year where the Alonso sideshow has been revived. He was a bit quiet in the first few races, but I think the more confidence he's got, the better the results have become, the more he's sort of back to his old self on track, the more I feel like he can get away a little bit more with the usual stuff we expect from Alonso off it. But the crucial thing for me is that I'm seeing the stuff on track that justifies it. And I again, like I did in my first answer, I hold my hands up and say I'm converted now. I totally get it. And it does seem ridiculous to me that I didn't see it before, but I am just honestly very thankful that I've had the chance to see the error of my ways and enjoy this guy for the incredible talent that he is, because as Ed was saying before, what a shame for people to have missed out on him. If he hadn't come back, I think I would have had the wrong impression of him for forevermore. So very glad I've been able to have this opportunity to confess, cleanse myself of my sins, and just enjoy Alonso for the rest of this season and however long he stays in F1 for.
Well, that's all people want to see, isn't it? The best drivers delivering. And I think the thing we shouldn't underestimate is how deep that drive is for Alonso to go for that third World Championship. It's been a big deal for him. He's been chasing it for what seems like forever since his last title in 2006. And Alpine wasn't an easy place for him to go, was it? It wasn't the line of least resistance. It wasn't Prost joining Williams in '93 to coast to a championship. It's the hard way, but he knew he had to take that chance to have any opportunity to get that extra world championship. So I think that shows he's not looking for an easy life. He wants to earn that third championship. It's unlikely, but you should never underestimate Alonso, and I think that's probably what Scott has learned over the past few years.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to see Alonso get back up to speed in F1. Thanks, Ed and Scott, Scott for your confession and Ed for your insight. Viewers, let us know in the comments, what can Alonso achieve in this comeback? Is this the best we're going to see? Can Alpine give him a car that can regularly win races and maybe even fight for another championship?